Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Dust to Destiny, Chapter 1. Remembering death and its significance in our narrations and verses. Young people should pay attention to these topics to seize opportunities in their lives and avoid wasting time. As one grows old, it becomes harder to change and correct past mistakes. With age, certain attachments deepen, and it becomes harder to rid oneself of bad habits or rectify past wrongdoings. Harun al-Rashid once tasked his courtiers to find an elderly person who had seen the Prophet ﷺ and heard a hadith from him. They found an old man who had seen the Prophet at the age of 7 and remembered a single sentence from him ﷺ. The sentence was as follows: "As a person ages and he does not discipline himself, two things grow younger in him: greed and long hopes." Harun gave him a bag of gold coins, and as the old man was leaving, he asked if this pension would be provided monthly. Harun laughed and said that the Prophet ﷺ was right, reflecting on how the man was worried about a pension when his life was so uncertain. Attachments grow stronger with age, so we must discipline ourselves at a young age and not waste opportunities. We should benefit from the reminders of death and its implications. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in his letter to Imam Hassan alayhi salam in Nahj al-Balagha, advises frequently remembering death and what comes after it, so that one is not overcome by it and is not caught off guard. It was mentioned earlier that writing a will make one mindful of death. Therefore, write a will and keep it with someone that you trust. Sometimes writing a will is obligatory, not just recommended. Reading the will from time to time has an impact on us. If someone's time has not come, writing a will and preparing a shroud does not bring death. Seeing the shroud reminds a person of death and detaches them from worldly attachments. These practices can help us remember death. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam used to pray in prostration, "O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help us detach from this world filled with pride and deceit. Help us focus on the eternal world and help us prepare for death before it comes." Fear of death. It is common for people to fear death. Some individuals even avoid the mere mention of death. Generally, we can categorize the fear of death into two types. Some fears are baseless and should be gradually eliminated, while other fears are sacred. The root of some fears lies in the lack of faith, ignorance, and inner deficiencies. Many narrations refer to these type of fears. For example, Imam Hadi alayhi salam visited a friend who was in the throes of death and found him weeping and fearful. Someone asked the Imam why people fear death so much. The Imam replied that we fear death because we don't understand it and we're unfamiliar with it. Just as a driver on an unfamiliar, dark road is anxious about what might happen next, we fear the unknown of death. Imam Hadi alayhi salam explained that if someone is covered in filth and wounds, a cleansing bath would relieve their suffering. In this analogy, death is like a cleansing bath for those whose souls are tainted with impurities and illnesses that were not purified during their lifetime. The person calmed down and soon passed away peacefully. Ignorance is a major reason for the fear of death. In another narration, Imam Jawad alayhi salam compared it to a child's fear of medicine, which arises from not knowing its benefits. An informed person welcomes the medicine because they understand that it will bring relief. Similarly, fear often stems from ignorance and intense attachments to the world. If you place adhesive tape on your bare palm, you can remove it easily without pain. However, if you place it on a hairy part of your body, removing it will be painful because it is entangled with many hairs. Likewise, intense attachments to various worldly matters create thousands of bonds that make detachment painful. These attachments act like chains binding the soul. Once a person approached the Holy Prophet ﷺ and said he was afraid of death and found it unpleasant. The Prophet ﷺ asked if the man had any wealth, to which he replied affirmatively. The Holy Prophet then asked if he had given anything to charity in preparation for the afterlife, and he replied negatively. The Prophet explained that this was the source of his fear, as his wealth was bound to his soul. Inshallah, we will continue in the next chapter. Until then, Allah Hafiz.